They see us rolling. They hating. Patrolling. They trying to catch us podding dirty. We are America's most appropriated podcast, the Pod People. I'm old man doo-doo ass Matisse Van Rossum.
I'm Ben Sheets, and shopping carts to the left of me, Stephen Reed to my right. Here I am, stuck in the windshield with you.
Nice. And last but maybe not least, I'm Cleveland Mosier, and I'm here in my garage trying to show you my new Lamborghini.
Just ignore the body in the windshield.
Yep.
Well, we're back at it again, and this week we're going to be talking about Ben's choice, which is the 2007 film Stuck, the last feature-length film of the late, great Stuart Gordon, who passed away recently. We recently covered another one of his classics, From Beyond. This film stars Mina Savari, Stephen Rea, Russell Hornsby, and Rukia Bernard, and it is based on the true story of a young woman who commits a hit and run and finds her victim stuck in the windshield of her car.
Now, I think the first thing to be asked, because I didn't do any research.
I did.
Good. I'm glad someone did. Is this a Fargo situation, or is this actually based on on a true?
No, this
Based
actually
on
happened.
A real story.
Yes, this film is based on the real life incident of the murder of Gregory Glenn Biggs, who is a homeless man who got hit by a young woman who was coming home from a party, and she was all fucked up, and he got stuck in her windshield, and she left him there for a couple of days until he died.
Obviously, they did change some things.
Yes.
But
I was surprised, though, and we'll get into this when we start talking about the film proper, but I was surprised how few things they actually changed. Like, some of the more ridiculous seeming events apparently did actually happen. Like, apparently she actually did go inside and have sex with her boyfriend right after hitting the dude and leaving him in her windshield. Apparently that was true.
Hey, man. You know, sometimes you just can't help it. You get real hot and heavy, and you gotta go. And
that's right.
You know, the adrenaline's going, and you gotta deal with it somehow, right?
You know, she was on ecstasy too, so you know, sometimes you just got to get one off. So.
Ecstasy 2, the sequel.
Ecstasy 2, the. I don't know where I was going with that.
I don't either. I'm so sorry.
Fuck, man. Ben, you're the only one who's seen this movie before. Tell us a little bit about why you picked Stuck.
yeah, so Stuart Gordon, you know, obviously recently passed away, and we covered From Beyond, which I really enjoyed. I hadn't seen it before, though. And
that was a new one for
you
all
know,
of
with
us.
Stuart Gordon, the movies I hear talked about all the time are From Beyond and Reanimator. You know, they don't really talk about much else besides that. And this movie I saw back in high school, and I was really impressed with it when I saw it. And I never hear it talked about. And I think it's a super underrated, like, modern exploitation movie. You know, it hits all of those buttons. It's so cleverly written. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Fun it is.
I really enjoyed this movie too. Not what I was expecting from Stuart Gordon. He's well known for his like Lovecraft adaptations, like you mentioned, Reanimator and From Beyond, but also like Castle Freak and Dagon. And I was not expecting this movie from Stuart Gordon, but I really liked it.
Same.
I enjoyed it a lot.
It is definitely shot in 2007.
It has such a darkly comedic tone. I love how it sets itself up with the nursery home footage mixed with like a gangster rap, like MOP sounding song over top of it.
Yes, while these elderly people are taking their pills and playing canasta and whatnot. And we're introduced to our main character, what's her name? Brandy, played by Mina Savari, who should be, it should be noted that she does have cornrows in this movie.
Oh boy, doesn't she?
And introduced over this montage of old people taking pills set to gangster rap, and we say, oh, haha, isn't that funny? The white nurse has cornrows, ha 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 ha. And then it turns out that's the main character.
Oh, yeah, we get the whole rest of the movie with her with that. We sure do.
I think she's really good in this movie.
I agree.
I will say that it is very hard to take her seriously with those cornrows.
But that's part of the charm of the character.
Yeah, well, she's
by charm, I mean approach. I don't know how to phrase that.
No,
but
I think charm is right, because she's not a very likable character, but like the cornrows just kind of like add to like what kind of a.
Well, yeah, because like I guess
think
the purpose of like her character by design is you're not supposed to take her seriously, which makes her reaction to these events all the more like almost surprising and horrifying. That it's not a jigsaw holding our protagonist's fate, you know, like over him. It's a random nurse. It's just someone who works in an old folks' home.
Yeah,
like,
who has responded very badly to a bad situation.
And you did mention, Cleve, that this is very 2000s, and that is a great example of it. You know, like white bitches with cornrows was a more acceptable thing in the 2000s.
I suppose.
Less likely to be called out for cultural appropriation back in those days.
Yeah.
But
I wouldn't even know to call it that now. I don't know if it is or isn't, but it sure. I'm just
sure
saying
is
it
a
looks
look.
it looks pretty tacky. That aesthetically, I can I think say from a position of anything.
I think in fairness, the 2000s were a pretty tacky time, kind of carrying over from the 90s. We also have to consider that her boyfriend Rashid, the first time we see him, he's wearing a snakeskin fedora.
Oh yeah.
Oh
man, isn't he?
Yeah. So
2000s fashion.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I would absolutely say that all that kind of stuff is very much a part of this film's charm.
I think I could get 5 whole people to sign my "Bring Back Snakeskin Fedoras" petition.
But anyway, yeah. So we see Mina Savari at her shitty job, literally shitty job. One of the first things we see is her having to clean up after old man doo-doo ass.
I'm not a fan of gratuity. Gotta say, I thought it was really effective. In a lot of circumstances, I would be super put off by seeing something like that in full.
By all that dookie.
Yeah, but here I think it does a great job of setting the tone for her character and where she's at. Like I thought it was a pretty good use.
I would actually agree, because right after that, the head nurse or administrator of the nursing home or whatever, her boss comes in and is telling her like, oh, you know, I want to move you up to head NA, but I need you to come in tomorrow. And she's like, oh, but I came in last Saturday and it's my only day off. She's like, oh, well, then I guess you don't really want the gig, you know? So it's like we see that she's having to put up with literal shit at her literally shitty job, and like to get probably what is a very minuscule pay grade for the amount of responsibility that she's going to have. I think that this movie is a really fantastic use of like the horrors of bureaucracy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also wage slavery.
Yeah. There's a lot of class struggle stuff in it, you know, like the whole inciting incident and Mina Savari not doing anything is because she doesn't want to risk not getting her promotion.
Right. Well, and segueing into Stephen Rea's character, he is having the worst day of his life, pretty much. I love how little we get about his background. It's enough to just, like, see the shit that he's having to put up with. He, like, gets kicked out of his apartment or wherever, the room he's renting. Can't even take his suitcase with him because he has to run from the landlord with his clothes on his way to a job interview. And we just see like the fucking bullshit bureaucracy that he has to put up with at the job interview, them not having his name in the system right, then being told that he needs to fill out a form that he's already filled out, and just like...
Man, I was expecting him to start slow dancing down some stairs to some cello any minute.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, like in that movie that came out recently. The Batman one that Joaquin Phoenix was in.
Oh, the Joker?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I
That's
forgot
it.
about that movie.
Yeah. But it's about that. So that was a modern
you-
pop culture reference. That's how you do those, right?
Dancing down the stairs to Gary Glitter is
Yeah,
what you
not
should have
cello.
said.
Isn't it?
No, it's
Oh.
Gary Glitter. You haven't actually
you
seen
haven't
the
seen
movie.
it, so like,
Correct.
Stop trying to reference a movie you haven't seen. That's why I didn't understand your reference.
get
I didn't
into
know
the
what the fuck you were
Cleveland
talking
zone,
about.
referencing things he doesn't know much about.
It's true, because I don't follow much pop culture. That's what happens when I try to make pop culture references. You can leave all of that in.
Oh, I will. You've
Good.
already given me enough to edit out this
Do
episode.
it. Do it.
I really love the whole setup with the job interview. He gets there in the brink of time, right at 1:00 when his interview is set for 1.
Holding all of his clothes in his arms.
He goes up to the receptionist, saying, "Oh, my interview's at 1. Can I get in?" And she's demanding that he sits and waits.
Yes.
I mean, she's politely insisting. He's the one who's just sort of cycling back at that point.
Well, I think there's a clear disdain in the way she talks to him.
Yes.
How she mentions multiple times to make sure you hold on to the clothes and stuff.
Oh, yeah, keep him on your person.
Yeah.
And that's true.
But, it's that kind of, like, vicious cycle where, like, she's just doing her job and she's having to put up with all of these people, but these people are also having to put up with her, and it just kind of, like, feeds itself. It's like...
It's the broken chain,
She doesn't have any control of when people get into the interview. It depends on the people who are interviewing, but she still has to put up with the people who, like Stephen Rea, who wants to get into his interview on time, understandably. So it's like, who's really at fault here? It's the system, man.
That's right. It's
the
that
system. The
It's
system
that
is
broken chain of accountability, and we've
That's
all had to
right.
deal with it.
Yeah, well,
That's the true horror of Stuck.
Man, isn't it? And just life.
Yes.
he sits in that room for like 3 hours, and we see a montage of just everyone leaving. And when they finally call his name, they say Brado instead of Bardo. It's like a tiny thing. Like, you wouldn't catch it if you're not paying attention. And he corrects her, and then he goes in, and he's not in the system because they misspelled his fucking last name. And so they have such a funny circular argument. You can't get an interview if you're not in the system.
Yeah, funny is not the word I would use. That shit is like way too real and depressing. Like, you really feel bad for him. And honestly, this is the first time in any movie that I've seen Stephen Rea in where I've felt more than disdain for him. Don't think that's his fault as an actor. He's just been in a lot of movies that I've really hated.
Yeah, well, I think Stuart Gordon does a great job with all of the actors in this
Yes.
movie and really helps elevate a lot of performances from actors that are a little uneven, to say the least. Stephen Rea is a great example of that. I think he does a great job in this.
Yeah, I think he's fantastic.
Yeah, I love this whole sequence because it does a great job of breaking the trope of the like the person like running from their landlord, like trying to not get evicted. And normally in other films, like they come back with the job and they're able to pay their rent.
Right.
Or whatever, and in this circumstance, it's the reality of it. Like he's trying to like get away so he can get this job, and of course he doesn't. And of course he's out on the street.
He didn't even get the interview. He just had a fucking circular argument about whether he was actually scheduled for an interview, and then forced to fill out the same enormous packet of paperwork that he's already done. And then he's homeless, and he keeps getting shit on, going to the park, trying to sleep in the park, being told that by the cops that he can't sleep there. Try the mission. Oh, but the mission is like on the other side of town. Well, better start walking. Fucking a cab.
I will say the homeless guy that he meets in the
Yes.
park is awesome.
The world's coolest homeless guy who helps him and tells him in a very knowing and kind of spooky way, "Oh, I'll be seeing you again." And he sure does.
He gave him a shopping cart too.
He did give him a shopping cart.
So he can level up as a homeless person.
That's right. start collecting them cans, baby. But yeah, we do see the homeless guy again later. Once Stephen Ray is dangling out of the front of a windshield because he gets swiped by Mina Savari, who is drunk and high on her way home from the club, and isn't paying attention to the road, and hits him real hard.
Do you remember the name of the club? It was something real 2007.
Oh, I was not paying attention to that at all.
Idea. Yeah, that scene where he gets hit is so brutal. You see both of his shins snap
In slow motion.
and the slow-mo of him
Blood
just
spray.
going into the windshield. It's really well done.
Yeah, that's the point of the movie where they remind you that like Stuart Gordon is primarily like a horror director when we get to some of that, because like, you could absolutely argue that this film is more of like a thriller, but man, like it does not pull any punches with the gore.
No, it definitely gets a horror rating because of the gratuity, most definitely.
Well, yeah, we see both of his shins snap backwards when he gets hit, and I'll talk about that more later. But
Yeah, the use of violence is definitely enough to take this film into the horror category. Because I was wondering the same thing, like while we were working our way into it. I was like, how is this going to go horror? Like, how is this going to go the horror route? I was like, oh, by execution. That's the answer.
It's survival horror in the most literal sense.
It really is.
The difference between something like this and something like 127 Hours is, I think, not only the extremity, but also kind of the nihilistic bent to it. Mina Savari's character is so focused on herself and her situation that she can't see the depravity that she's causing in a lot of respects.
Well, I think for a little while you can explain that off as she's in shock, but eventually, like she's absolutely like beyond the point of like making bad decisions because she's in shock. I think there's still like a little bit of sympathy you can have with her, like when she first hits him and she just tries to get back to the house and like put the car in the garage and try to figure out like what to do, and then her boyfriend gives her more booze and drugs and they end up having sex and she forgets about
Well, she doesn't forget.
Well, no,
because we have this amazing sequence where she's having sex and she keeps seeing Stephen Ray's face coming through the windshield and she starts screaming during sex.
And her boyfriend's just like, "Oh yeah, you like that, baby," and she's like, "Ah!"
I thought that was hilarious.
I did think that was pretty funny.
It's such a dark streak of comedy throughout this movie.
Yeah, it's the comedy of the absurd, because like it's so dark and fucked up.
You don't know what else to do other than laugh.
Yeah, it just gets really weird, and I think that certain things are definitely played for laughs.
Yes.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah, another great example is the day after she goes into work and immediately realizes, I can't stay here. I need to do something about this. And so she goes to her friend that works there who's helping another patient, and she's clipping her toenails, and she surprises her, and you get this brutal shot of like a toenail snapping in half essentially, and the old woman who plays this elderly character is just fantastic.
Oh,
she
gives
this really pissed off diatribe about how she could lose her foot. Old people lose their feet
all the time.
And she just goes off, and it's just another great example of like Stuart Gordon just expertly like meshing like gross out brutality with a really dark comic edge.
Yeah, I like how over the top a lot of the characters are, and I like how like Stephen Rea is like the one like sort of grounding character that keeps things from getting too ridiculous. I do really like Russell Hornsby's performance as Rashid, her boyfriend. I love the scene when she goes to his house and finds him with another woman in his bed, and she pulls a dirty cast iron skillet out of the sink and hits the other woman in the face.
And just
looks
throws
like a
her out
cartoon,
into the
like, sound
hallway
effect.
completely naked.
Yep, throws her out onto her ass in the hallway naked, and there's just like an old guy standing out there just like just kind of like blank face looking on. That shit's really great. And also how Rashid like talks a big game about like how he's a gangbanger or whatever, how he's killed literally thousands of people, and like she tries to go get his help to go like kill the homeless man stuck in her windshield, and as soon as he's confronted with that, like his like tough exterior like kind of crumbles, and he's just kind of like fumbling. He's like, yeah, no, I've done it thousands of times. Oh yeah, it's real easy, like. It's obvious that he's never dealt with anything like this before. I really liked that element.
Feels like his bluff is being called in real time, and it's funny to watch.
Yeah, so many like wonderful little comedies of error, like him talking to the dispatch person over the phone and realizing he has no like relevance to his whereabouts. Just he's in a garage somewhere.
Yeah,
Don't know where.
I think that sequence is great, and that's not the only time where we see like the banality of like these bureaucratic phone systems. Like at one point, Mina Savari calls 911 to try to get help, and she gets this automated answering machine tree that goes on and on and on.
Oh, and she tries to call the hospital and it tells her to call 911 and then lists all of these other options because she doesn't want to call 911. That's a really good point. Or when the little Hispanic kid from next door like hears Stephen Rea like honking the horn in the garage and like goes and sees him and like goes to get his mom to get help, and then they get stopped by the dad who's like, we can't call the cops. Like, do you want to get deported? Like, they're going to call immigration on us. And it's like, yeah, you're probably right. That is how that would happen. It's like, there's so many times where Stephen Rea is like almost saved, but he ends up being screwed over because of some dumb, like, evil bureaucracy.
Yeah. He's just
like,
a constant victim of circumstance.
Yeah.
Just horribly unlucky.
Horribly
shit.
Unlucky.
It just goes on and on. So many examples of him almost getting someone's attention. For example, she calls a cab. Mina Savari calls a cab to go to work because she can't drive her fucking car to work. And as she's getting into the cab, Stephen Ray's, pushing the horn. The cabbie is like, you want some help fixing it? Those horns mess up all the time. Yeah. He's played by Mr. Leahy from Trailer Park Boys.
Oh, yeah.
In a great little character performance. He gets so close to seeing what happened, but she goes in and knocks him out before he can get to it.
Or like when the other neighbor comes by with his Pomeranian that gets off the leash and like runs into the garage where like Stephen Rea has managed to like crawl onto the floor, and we've got this little dog just like licking at his like exposed shin bones.
It's so hard to watch, but it's so hilarious at the same time.
It's so funny but so gross. Yeah, oh man, that's one of those really brutal parts. Another one is like when he's trying to pull himself through the windshield so he can reach her phone, and he's impaled on the windshield wiper and he's like stuck, and so he's trying to like pull it out of his gut, and it's just like it just sits on it in this really gory close-up of him like trying to pull this sharp piece of plastic out of his guts.
Yeah, very Hostile or Saw-esque.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the violence in this film, like it has, I think, the same weight to it because it's a character like trapped in an environment trying to escape, by horrific means.
Yeah, we were still kind of in the wave of torture porn by then.
Yeah, we're in the meat of it in 2007.
There's definitely a lot of those elements in this movie, which which is definitely what pushes into like the horror thriller territory.
And I love it. It's just an incompetent jigsaw.
Yes.
Like who's responsible for all of it. Like instead of this like mastermind or whatever that's like torturing this person, or like a hostile situation where it's a strange like mastermind ring of like torture tourists, it's just a lady, just someone who wants to keep their job, just a regular person. And I appreciate the shit out of that. That was
a
great.
regular person who is unwilling to take responsibility for what she's done, because that's what she keeps telling Stephen Rea is, it's not my fault, it's your fault. You did this.
Yeah, it's just the banality of evil, the movie.
It's like you should have been paying attention to where you were going when like she was
texting.
She was on her phone.
texting.
Yeah.
She drove through a red too.
Right, exactly. Every time she comes back and keeps telling me, she's like, "Oh no, don't worry, help is coming. I called somebody." It's just like, oh, fuck. I felt for him in ways that I haven't felt, or in ways that I don't feel for characters in like Saw movies.
Yeah.
You know, like especially because we spend so long at the beginning of the movie before he even gets hit, just like observing him being like beaten down by life. Just having the absolute worst day that ends in the worst way, you know?
But boy, doesn't he get
Justice.
he gets justice at the end.
Street justice.
He gets garage justice.
Garage justice.
The movie.
We'll use that until we can get into that. We'll use it as a segue to talk about like the one thing that this movie did that like really broke my suspension of disbelief in kind of a bad way. It's when he starts walking around on his broken shins.
It feels very exploitation movie-esque, which is fitting for this because, like, in those type of movies, you definitely have to suspend your disbelief. And this movie has all the hallmarks of, like, a classic exploitation movie. You know, ripped from the headlines, larger than life.
It does. I feel like they could have done it in a way that would have maintained my suspension of disbelief and wouldn't have made me notice it. Like, if just one of his shins had, like, shattered, then I would say, okay, well, because, you know, he makes himself a splint, and he makes himself a crutch, and he's hobbling around. But in that shot where he gets hit, we very clearly see, like, both of his shin bones break backwards. Clean breaks all the way through. No way you'd be able to put any weight on either of those legs.
No.
And then he's, you know, by the end, he's hobbling around with a broom crutch and, like, putting very much weight on his legs.
Yeah.
And if they had just done one of them, it would have been one thing, but, like,
it's like adrenaline is one thing, but there's also just physics.
Physics, yeah.
Like you can't stand upright on like a shattered foundation. Like there's nothing there for it. Like a broom crutch isn't enough. And just like from passing out from the pain, like repeatedly, which he does do.
Yes.
But yeah, that can only go so far.
And like that's the only thing, and that doesn't happen until pretty late in the movie, so it's not like a huge deduction as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, and like we still got to see one leg get shattered, and like okay, we just know there's a good leg there. You know, he could hobble about with a crutch, but
I do love that
it's a movie,
that at a certain point which is why I don't want to dwell on that too long.
Same.
It's why it's very satisfying to see him sort of take his own justice into his own hands, rather than he spends the whole movie trying to get help from various people who almost help him, but nobody's doing it, so he just fucking does it himself. He fucking stabs Rashid in the eye with a pen when he comes out to try to smother him with a plastic bag. That was very cool. And then he defeats Mina Savari in a spectacular way.
I love both of those sequences. You know, the Rashid sequence is really brutal. Rashid is planning on smothering him, or you know, he has a gun too that he's thinking about using, which is cleverly, you know, used later.
Yeah, well, Mina Savari tells him not to use the gun because they're in a residential area and that somebody will hear it, which Rashid doesn't like, because if he's gonna kill the dude, he wants it to just be like quick and easy, and it's really his distaste for it that gets him killed because he's not paying attention. But yes, the gun comes back in a fantastic way at the very end. Are we ready to talk about that? Or
Yes.
do we have other stuff we want to get into?
I don't.
Mina Savari sort of reaches a hysterical breaking point and goes out to the garage and just starts dumping gas all over Stephen Rea and Rashid's body and the car and everything, all the time screaming about how this isn't my fault, it's your fault. You're a crazy person. You broke in here and you killed my boyfriend and then you set the garage on fire. And he manages to get into the car while she's in front of it and breaks her legs by driving her into the back wall, which is so satisfying. I even made a note that the unstuck has become the stucky. I thought at that point that there was going to be like a little bit of time where like she was stuck there and like there was some interaction with her like trying to get out of there while Stephen Rea has like wandered off. But oh no.
Yeah, we get just the perfect amount with her just asking for help, and he just sort of looks at her like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Like after all this.
Right. Well, and then I've forgotten exactly how the final sequence of events goes. Like he has a match that he's about to drop.
A box of matches.
And like he's about to set her on fire and then the match goes out. And then what actually does start the fire?
Doesn't she have the gun? And she
yes,
tries to
that's
shoot
right.
him.
She tries to shoot. Yeah, she has Rashid's gun. She tries to shoot him. A spark from the muzzle flare ignites the gas and sets the whole garage on fire, taking her with it, while Stephen Rea hobbles off on his shattered legs.
And I know you had problems with him hobbling off, but what a visual!
Oh, perfect! Yeah, great visual. No complaints. Like from either of us.
Garage on fire.
Yeah. I don't have a problem with that.
Burning in the background. It's such great imagery.
I agree. I don't have a problem with that. I have a problem with them breaking their own rules to get to that point.
Yeah, you just need like one leg to shatter and you're good.
Right. That's all I'm saying. Yes, like him hobbling off into the night is with the garage burning behind him is very triumphant, despite the fact that like what is he going to do from there? Where is he going to go?
Not be dead, but still homeless, still without a job, and
now with multiple wounds.
Yeah, a lot of medical bills, debt. Yeah.
The movie ends before you have too much time to think about that. You know?
Right, because you don't want to spend too much time thinking about it.
The movie,
talk
like
about
the bulk of the
ending
movie
your
was
filmography with a bang. Like, what a great sequence to go out on.
Also, I am really glad that we do get kind of a triumph at the end of like him getting away and like Mina Savari getting like what's coming to her, because the real story is considerably more sad because he did just sit in a garage for a couple of days until he died, and the only reason they caught the woman who did it is because she was literally bragging about it at a party several years later. That's way bleaker.
Whoa, yeah, that is. Dang, that's wretched.
It's the perfect ending for an exploitation movie because it's, you know, the morality tale. Even though the film has such a nihilistic streak to it, you do get that sort of justice that comes with these type of movies. And
you get a justice.
You know, on top of that, you see the Hispanic mother and the son coming to help him too.
Yes.
You know, you see that once he actually took the action himself, he got the support of the others that were standing dormant before. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, I like to think that they'll go on to like help him and take care of him in some regard. Because, like, while I agree there is a justice gained at the end, the injustice of the system that put these characters into these positions, there's nothing to be done about that. Like, that still exists. There's no victory in that regard. But at least he burned it down like Seth Rollins.
Yeah, Yeah, and I mean, in the story, it's, it's justice and triumphant for him. I'm not talking structurally, because obviously we see the structures and how fucked up they are through the movies. Stuart Gordon really, intelligently emphasizes all of that,
Yeah, I do appreciate his analysis of those things. That's why I say it's a justice that is won. Maybe not totally justice, but hell yeah, I mean, it's a very fun movie, and it ends in a spectacular way befitting the characters and the events of the movie. And in that regard, I have absolutely no complaints.
Big same.
Do you guys want to rate?
I think it's time.
Sure.
Okay. Ben, well, this was your pick.
Sure,
Why don't
yeah,
you start?
I'll start. I think this movie is great. I think it's super underrated. Stuart Gordon does a great job not only directing actors that can be a little hit or miss to give excellent performances. Mina Savari is great in this movie. Stephen Ray is great in this movie. But also, he writes a really clever script with this, with a lot of setups and payoffs, bits of super dark humor and brutality. I think this is a really great movie. I am obligated to not give it a better score than From Beyond, because I would feel weird about doing that, because I think they're both great, but I can't say one is necessarily better. So I'm going to give it the same score as I did From Beyond, and that's going to be a 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it the same. I really liked this movie. It was refreshing to see Stephen Rea in a movie that I liked, so I could appreciate his acting ability, because I do think he's a good actor. And yeah, Mina Savari is great in this as well, just to re-emphasize everything that you've said. The aesthetic is maybe a little bit dated. It's very, very
extremely dated,
it's
but that's
very,
part of the
very
charm.
2007. I like the design of everything. I think the script is really clever. Nothing spectacular to be said of the cinematography, but the effects are very good. A lot of blood in this one, some really nasty, gruesome practicals, and a cute dog licking some exposed bone. Yeah, so I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5 as well.
Well, to finish things off, I think there are a lot of films out there, a lot of great films.
There are a lot of films out there.
That have, God damn it. As I was saying, there are a lot of great films out there that have covered the themes of the banality of evil and the horrors of a bureaucracy and that broken chain of accountability. But I think this film does so with great execution and had me standing up and cheering at the end. Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great. I didn't know anything about it going in. I had no expectations, even low, and I was also kind of scared going into this one because the last film that Ben picked was The Greasy Strangler. So, I was worried it was going to be another one of those. I was a little terrified, to be honest, and was quite pleased. I had a great time. Thank you, Ben.
It's a similarly weird, and offbeat movie.
It is.
But
it is weird
much
and offbeat.
different.
Quite. So... I thought it was a lot of fun, and I'm going to also mirror your scores, making it a unanimous 4 pods.
One thing that I want to talk about really quickly before we wrap up here is there's one line in the movie. Rashid talks about how people think, the cops are watching everything, but in reality, you can do whatever to whoever and get away with it. And he's like, look at the person who's president right now. And it feels so prescient because, this movie came out in 2007 during Bush, and it could easily apply to Trump just in the same way.
Yeah, no, it's very true. That is, there are some things about this movie that have not aged well, but I think the underlying message and themes still hold up very, very well.
Agreed.
Because it's been 13 years, but not a lot has changed, has it? And a lot of the things that have changed for the worse.
Mm-hmm. It feels weird looking back at cornrows and snakeskin fedoras and feeling nostalgia, folks.
Oh,
That's
boy.
a weird ass feeling.
Well,
And speaking of weird ass feelings,
Yeah.
let's talk about our sponsor this week.
who is it?
Well, this week, my dear friends and listening family, as if you're a listener, you're
You're a family.
you are. Where aren't we all? And so this week is brought to you by Harry Hangelfort's fantastic, lovely. You know what it's about. Anti-homeless windshield spray.
Oh,
You tired of running, of hitting and not being able to run? Don't be tired anymore, because you can just spray it right on your windshield and don't have to worry about vehicular manslaughter.
because remember, everybody, homeless people are more like bugs than people.
No,
Just to be smeared off the windshield.
No, that's not in the prompt. Oh,
Weird.
no.
It has your signature underneath.
No, it does not. No, it does not. It
Oh,
sure.
weird. I'm looking at it right.
Sure
I'm looking
doesn't.
at it
why,
now.
Why are these letters forming in blood? Oh no.
And it says,
oh God.
homeless people aren't people. Love Cleveland T. Mosher.
That's weird. That wasn't there a minute
That's pretty-
ago.
that's pretty weird,
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know where that came from. It could have been the sponsor shelf. Better. Well, it's starting to glow. I'd better stop talking now. I think it's about time. It's about that time.
All right. Well, next week it is my choice, and I thought long and hard about what to pick. And you know what? This time, I'm gonna be the one picking something difficult to watch. I figured it's time that we initiate Cleveland. So we're gonna watch Eraserhead next week.
Hell yes. Hell yes.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Our first David Lynch on the podcast, and your first David Lynch period, Cleveland, is that right? You said you've seen The Elephant Man,
Yeah,
right?
I've seen the Elephant Man.
Okay.
And love the Elephant Man.
The Elephant Man rules, not super indicative of David Lynch's style.
Have you seen David Lynch's Dune?
I have also seen David Lynch's Dune.
Okay, also not indicative of David. On the complete opposite ends of the spectrum, not indicative of David Lynch.
I have unfortunately seen that film. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
don't expect either of those movies for Eraserhead.
Okay, I will leave my expectations in the middle then.
Yeah, there you go.
Because one of those films I love, one of those films I do not love.
Expect fun for the whole family.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to say.
I can't wait. How wholesome.
Well, until then, if you like the show, share an episode with someone you know and leave us a nice rating and review on Apple Podcasts.
I loved that rhyme.
Smash those 5 stars, baby.
All 5.
All 5 of them. Yeah, if it's less than 5, then I ain't got time for that kind of jive.
Oh. Not good rhyme.
I tried.
I didn't like that one. The previous one was good though, but
Well, whatever. You can follow us on Twitter at PodPeoplePod or at letterbox.com/PodPeoplePod for a list of all the films we've talked about on the show with our average ratings and links to those corresponding episodes. You can follow me on Twitter at DeepStateAussie if it tickles your fancy.
I'm on Twitter at Mr. Sheets.
and I'm occasionally tweeting for Light Arc Studios. We continue to work on It Stares Back, and yes, we are still working on it. And it's coming right the fuck along, frankly. Come check us out on Steam, man. Or join our Discord via the Light Arc website. And you can also see my work on ArtStation. Just search Cleveland Mosher, ArtStation, and you'll find it. I'm right there, just waiting to show you all of my pictures, paintings, and other doodles. And if you like those doodles and you want one yourself, shoot me an email. Contact me via that same place, and you could maybe get one of your own. Commissions are open as of this recording, and I'm having a great time doing those for a living.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks as always for listening. Until next time, remember to keep your wiper fluid refilled. You never know what you might end up with smeared across your windshield.
Keep your fluids refilled in general. Those are important.
Keep them fluid.
Oh, yeah.